Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. And let's bring him on to the Boardwalk Honda hotline here. Jeff, what's happening, man?
It's all good. Waiting a couple of weeks for the regular season to start.
Well, I think this is the big week coming up for people's drafts, so we need those last-minute draft tips. And we were just talking right before you came on. All right. If you have what pick in the first round, is there a drop-off for you? Like, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you feel good. But where is it in most drafts that you feel is that first drop?
First drop for me is probably round 4 because I think you're looking at 20 running backs and 20 wide receivers. So that's right around round 4. You gotta get two of those two top. You need to get up 2 of those 2 top 20 running backs to have a successful draft, in my opinion.
No, I'm talking about in the first round. If you have the 5th pick or the 6th pick where is for you that drop off that if you have this pick, you got to get creative?
Well, if you're in a standard league, I'd say 4 or 5. In a PPR league, it goes a little bit deeper because you can go to that wide receivers. But I think you got 4 or 5 running backs you can make an argument for a solid feature back this year.
All right. Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott. A lot of people like those as the top 4. Are they also your top 4 picks?
They are the top 4. There's no question about it. I would make a case for Melvin Gordon or Alvin Kamara, especially in the PPR league, but Melvin Gordon is the only one I would consider putting in that top 5.
Okay. Now, Antonio Brown, he's the top wide receiver. Would you go with him or another receiver, or do you go quarterback in that first round if you have pick 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there?
I'm not taking a quarterback in the first 10 rounds, period.
Right.
So I'm going wide receiver. So that's definitely – it's running back, wide receiver for the first 4 rounds, unless you can get Gronkowski in round 2.
Jeff, who's a guy in the quarterback position, now that you said you're not taking a quarterback in the first 10, which is a common strategy, but who's a guy on a lower tier? So if you're not going to pick a quarterback till that late and possibly even later, who's a guy that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about that's really going to have a good productive year for your fantasy team?
I do an article every year called Quarterback by Committee, and I've got 2 quarterbacks out of the top 12 that combine to about quarterback 6 or 7 production. So Alex Smith plus Jameis Winston, those are those 2 guys. If you want to go a little higher, Andrew Luck's quarterback 10, and he's been top 5 whenever he's healthy. It's a riskier strategy, but you can definitely make the case for him, and I don't trust that running game for the Colts yet either.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Your fantasy football drafts are coming. We're trying to give you a little bit more insight to get ready for that draft. In that first round, we talked about Gurley, Bell, Johnson, Elliott, Kamara, Gordon. Do you have other first-round backs that you would take at the back end of that first round?
Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, as we mentioned. Leonard Fournette's really the only one I would consider. Kareem Hunt sneaks in the top 12s if your heart's set on a running back, and I would not argue about going running back, wide receiver on the back end. I think if you need in the first round, you got to Hunt is my line. That's probably where I'm at.
What about Saquon Barkley? I know a lot of people feel like they are going to be high on him this year. Are they reaching if they take him in the first round?
I think it's a risk-reward thing, and you don't know if a rookie's going to hit that wall or if everything looks pointed toward the Giants using him as a feature back. Barkley's hurt right now. They're nursing him to get ready for regular season. I'm taking Dalvin Cook over him.
All right, let's look at some wide receiver options. We have some text messages coming in. I said Antonio Brown. Is Antonio Brown your first wide receiver off the board? A guy asked about DeAndre Hopkins. Should he be a first-round pick? So who's your favorite wide receiver this year?
Antonio Brown's elite among elite. And the next one I would take would be DeAndre Hopkins. He's also a back of the first round in PPR. The only other wide receiver I have in the first round for PPR would be Odell Beckham. And after that, you start to get into a group where you got Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, and then another tier drops down from there.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, A.J. Green, he was up in that top tier of wide receivers. Is he still a guy you're considering in those top 2 rounds?
He is, but he comes with a little bit of a flag because the Bengals are expected to be bad this year. So anytime you're looking at a bottom 8 offense, which I think the Bengals are, and they might have an iffy schedule as well, I hesitate with him because to take a wide receiver like that, you're coupling him with Andy Dalton, and I don't trust him.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. We're looking at some draft tips here to help you out with your fantasy football drafts. What about the tight end question? Gronkowski, Zach Ertz. I guess there's probably a couple of guys. Kelsey. What do you do with the tight end? When is the right time to be the guy who sneaks in there and takes that tight end?
Well, I'm looking, again, if it's PPR, they elevate. And if it's a bonus PPR, we get a little bit more for a tight end catch. It's even higher. But Gronkowski, I'm looking at certain guys, if they're available in that round or later, I'm taking them. Gronkowski, back end of round 2. Kelsey, round 3. Ertz, round 4. After that, the sweet spot's kind of like tight end 5 through 9. I mean, you got Jimmy Graham who's a little bit older, Delanie Walker a little bit older. I'm skipping that group of Ingram, Walker, Reed. I'm looking at the guys in Indianapolis or Tampa Bay, but the guy I'm really liking is David Njoku in Cleveland. I'm probably saying that wrong, but Cleveland, David Njoku he's got some upside. Whenever you have a tight end that's kind of younger, big target for a younger quarterback, that's a good target, and I like him in his upside this year.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, thefootballguys.com, answering some of your fantasy football questions. And then we get a lot of of course, the draft is coming up. People want to know about certain guys and your gut feeling on some guys. And let's throw a couple names that have been coming into us. How about a guy like LaShawn McCoy? He's got a lot of concerns off the field. So what are you advising people with McCoy in the draft?
I'm looking elsewhere. I mean, if he's like the 20th back out of the top 20, okay. But it's a bad offense. It's a questionable. They're banged up all over the place. Bad quarterback. He might be suspended himself. There's so many reasons to look elsewhere. I mean, McCoy's a fourth rounder for me, but he's at the back end. I'm looking at Carlos Hyde over him, maybe even Jay Ajayi, but he's a running back. He's running back number 20 overall for me.
Christian McCaffrey is a guy that people were excited about last year, maybe disappointed a little bit. Is McCaffrey, where are you taking him in drafts this year?
I think he's going to go in round 2. He's looking at a running back 10 to 15 range. I think that's a solid pick for him. I like Jordan Howard a little bit more for safety, but Christian McCaffrey, there's a lot of upside. There's PPR upside. And they're looking to get him a lot of touches this year. If he can hold up, he's a solid pick.
You mentioned a guy that's been coming in, Jordan Howard. What about the running back situation in Green Bay, getting Aaron Rodgers back? What does that do, and who's the guy at running back in Green Bay?
Most are pointing to Jamal Williams right now, and he's going off the board around running back 30 to 35 range. For me, I'm taking Rex Burkhead in that neighborhood. I'm going more proven offense, and the guy who's got a lot more upside. The only running back that sort of interests me in Green Bay because he's cheap is Ty Montgomery. In most of the leagues, he considered a running back, but they just got rid of Jordy Nelson. They don't have reliable wide receiver 2s and 3s. I think Montgomery's going to see a lot of passes out of the backfield.
If you're a fan of Hard Knocks, you've been seeing Jarvis Landry as kind of one of the stars of that show. But will he star on your fantasy roster this year?
I think he's a solid PPR play. He's much lower on my draft board in standard leagues just because he's getting a lot of targets, a lot of catches, but Cleveland and touchdowns tend to not mix.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Some more questions coming in. Listener wants to know, which wide receiver should he keep in the keeper league, Baldwin or Jarvis Landry? Doug Baldwin, he's an interesting pick this year.
He is, and I think Seattle, he's going to be – Baldwin's the focus of that offense because the running back is still kind of upset there. I think Chris Carson's leading that backfield, but it's still a little fluid there. Doug Baldwin's the number one guy. Jimmy Graham's now gone, so I think he's going to see a lot of targets. But the value there is Tyler Lockett at wide receiver. I would keep Landry more, but it's close. Baldwin's a little bit older. That's the only reason I'm thinking Landry for keepers, but Baldwin's probably better for you this year. Long term, maybe it's Landry.
Okay, interesting name here. Jimmy Graham was a stud with the Saints, kind of bottomed out with the Seahawks. What does he do in Green Bay?
I think he's a solid option for the very reasons I just said about Green Bay. They're lacking wide receivers. They're not great at running back right now. Jimmy Graham's going to see a lot of targets. And in the past where Aaron Rodgers had a good tight end, he's done well. So I think Graham's going to be a very valuable pick this year.
Question that came in is, which quarterbacks are you reaching on this year?
Reaching, I don't think it's a reach, but I think Alex Smith is borderline QB1 this year. I think that he's got that potential. There are guys outside the top 12 who I really like. The guys I like beyond that range, Jared Goff threw a lot last year. He's got three good wide receivers. I mentioned Jameis Winston, who's getting not much attention because he's out for the first 3 weeks due to suspension. Those are three guys I like. And Matt Ryan's he's a quarterback 16. That seems crazy to me.
What about a guy like Trey Burton, who was pretty good with the Eagles last year? He's now going to be the guy in Chicago. Is he a guy that you think could be a sleeper?
I think so, and that was one tight end. I threw out a lot of names earlier, but I skipped over Trey Burton. I thought we'd come back to him. We have him borderline tight end number one, and I think he's got some upside there because if the Bears are going to throw the ball a lot, you got a young quarterback in Trubisky. Burton's going to see a lot of targets. He's very valuable, and so is Dallas Goedert as a late pick for the Eagles. Both systems use the tight end a lot.
All right, Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com. He'll be with us each and every week to answer your fantasy football questions. We got in a bunch there. Jeff, a couple tips, names, sleepers, something, anything that you want to pass along to our listeners who all have their drafts coming up. One of the big things I love about our segment is if you're listening and you hear a name of a guy that's on your roster, your ears always kind of perk up. So we'll give you the floor to kind of throw out some names and tips and sleepers and whatever you'd like.
Well, I mentioned Rex Burkhead. I think his stock is only going up and up from here. Tyler Lockett is a great wide receiver in the back end. I think you got John Brown is getting a lot of press and buzz in Baltimore. They just lost their tight end for week one, so I think he's going to get a lot of targets as well. And running backs, I think you can take Jonathan Wilkins out of Indianapolis and hope for the best as a late-round pick. And I mentioned Goedert, a tight end for Philadelphia. They love two tight ends. You could get some touchdowns late.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Hopefully everybody got some information to go into their drafts with. If you have a draft, good luck. Mine is coming up on Thursday. Got the big one on Thursday, then another one on Sunday. So everybody out there, good luck. Jeff, good luck. How many drafts have you done so far?
I've done 3 so far. I got 1 or 2 more to go.
All right. Well, he'll be with us all season long taking your fantasy football questions. Jeff, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Looking forward to another season.
All right, enjoy the games and good luck with the draft.